will spook you. I was reflecting on all of the stories that I've read on this channel over the past 2 years, and I've read some really good stories. Some of them have stuck with me. Just a recap, or not really a recap, but just going down memory lane. I remember I read a story about somebody who was in the military, I believe. I can't remember what country they were stationed at, but I remember they were at these abandoned ruins or some sort, and they heard like a blood-curdling woman screaming and saw orbs or something. I just remember that one being a really good one. Another really good story I remember, it's one of the first stories I ever read on this channel, was about a girl who went to Niagara Falls with her boyfriend, and she was overwhelmed by this horrible emotion of depression and suddenly had this feeling, a suicidal feeling. And I believe she also saw an orb, and it even came with a picture. That was a really good one too. And just reflecting on some of these really well-written stories, I feel like I've really set the bar high for myself, where I would like to continue to find really good stories that are believable yet scary. And so I believe I accomplished that today, but I guess that's for you to determine. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump in, but I do have a drink. I don't want to say what time it is, don't judge me, but I've got some whiskey and ginger ale. A drink just sounded really good. I'm not driving. I believe that's Jim Beam. Jim Beam. Have you ever heard that song? It's not called Jim Beam, but it's by K-Flay. And what has it go? Sucking on a bottle of Jim Beam, wishing it was you. That's a good song. I'll put that down below as one of my favorite songs at the moment. Okay. This first story is called No Good Deed Goes Unpunished. This happened in fall of 1993 when I was 20 years old. In the interest of context, this was before I started college, and I was working in the material prep department of a plastics factory on the night shift. I was the only woman in the department, and my male coworkers were initially skeptical that I could handle the job, but I proved myself and earned their respect. It was hard work, but on the plus side, it also put me in the best shape of my life. It was also about this same time that I dumped my abusive boyfriend. Hallelujah. Good for you, girl. He was verbally, emotionally, and physically abusive, as well as an alcoholic. This fact, more than anything, is probably why I got myself into this situation in the first place. I had just gotten off work, and it was about 1:30 a.m. My car was running on fumes, so I stopped at a local gas station to fill up. While I was pumping gas, a woman about my age approached me, looking nervous and scared. She said that she had been at her boyfriend's house and they'd had a fight. She'd walked to the gas station to use the payphone and called a friend to pick her up. On her way to the gas station, a car pulled up as she was walking, and the guys inside started catcalling and harassing her. With a slight movement of her head, she indicated a car that was parked off to the side by the gas station dumpsters. I saw a large light green car like a Caddy or a Lincoln, with at least 2 or 3 shadowy figures figures inside. She said they threatened her and she was too scared to call her friend and wait. The woman was neat, well-dressed, and didn't seem high or drunk or anything like that. She just seemed really nervous and freaked out, so I did not even hesitate. I finished pumping my gas and told her to hop in my car, that I would take her home. Okay, so I've never read this story before, but being in the writer's shoes, that's probably something I would have done as well. I'm very sensitive to women that are in abusive relationships, and I've put myself in danger trying to help women. So I already know this would have happened to me if I was in this writer situation. Whatever is gonna happen. At that time, on a weeknight, there was little traffic, so I booked it right out of the gas station and asked her where she lived. She kept twisting around in the seat to see if the car was behind us, and when I asked her to put her seatbelt on, she ignored me and kept looking for the car. I assumed she was just scared. A few blocks down the road, however, I noticed she was looking around the car, and she started asking me about money. Where's your purse? Where's your bag? I need money. You need to give me some money. My stomach sank. I have this woman in my car, and now she's gonna rob me. Fuck. But when I thought about it, robbery just didn't make sense. I was driving a 1985 Chevette, affectionately nicknamed Shitbox, and was wearing my work clothes, a ratty t-shirt and jeans with combat boots. Hell yeah. I did not look like a person with a lot of cash, primarily because I wasn't a person with a lot of cash. She twisted around in the seat again and started yelling, "There they are, there they are." She didn't sound scared anymore. I checked the rear view, and sure enough, the light green car is right behind me. She started cackling and bouncing up and down in the seat. "My boys are gonna fuck you up, bitch. They're gonna fuck you up." She's laughing like crazy, opening the glove box, looking in the back for a bag or a purse, telling me all the messed up shit these guys are planning to do to me. Now, if I had been smart, I would have just driven to the police station. Actually, if I had been very smart, I would have called the cops from the gas station and waited with her until they arrived. That would have been the intelligent thing to do. Unfortunately, none of this crossed my mind until later. In the moment, I just got really, really fucking angry. I realized 3 key things all at once. There was an intersection up ahead with cars on either side waiting to cross, and the light had just turned yellow. I had a spare box cutter that I kept for work in the driver's side door compartment. The crazy bitch still hadn't put on her seatbelt. I didn't think. I floored it and passed under the yellow light just as it turned red. I glanced back to see if the green car was still behind me, but the cross traffic at the intersection had started to move, and they had not caught up. The bitch started yelling. I slammed on the brakes and she hit the dash and windshield with a solid and viciously satisfying crack. When she rebounded to the passenger seat, I had the box cutter in her face and was screaming some serious batshit crazy stuff. I can't remember exactly what I said, but it was along the lines of, "Get the fuck out. Get the fuck out of my car before I cut off your face and make you eat it, bitch." I love this writer. The crazy screaming and box cutter combo worked. She grabbed blindly at the handle and popped the door open, and I started shoving and punching her until the bitch tumbled out the door to the curb. I stomped on the gas, got to the next turn, and squealed around it. With the passenger door still open, I made a few more turns because I was afraid that green car might catch up to me. After a little while, I stopped to close the passenger door, and then I cut across town and got onto the highway to go home. I was on the highway for about 5 minutes before the shakes started. I pulled off to the shoulder to calm down and get my shit together, and then I drove sister. I was living with her temporarily after the breakup with my ex. Everything that happened, she wrapped me in a tight bear hug while simultaneously yelling about how stupid I was for not going to the police. I've never been so glad to be yelled at in my life. Damn, that was a good story. This is beautiful. She got away. But fuck that lady and those guys. No good deed goes unpunished. That's a perfect title. What would you have done in this situation? Would you have left her at the gas station? Or would you have tried to help and have fallen for it just like she did? You can hear my dog snoring. Bugs are terrible for ASMR. This next story has a really interesting title, so I wanted to read it. I'm hoping it's good. This is called I Think the Cruise Company I Worked for is Covering Up My Friend's Disappearance. Right, I know this is a long post, but I'm leaving in a few days, and I wanted to be sure I got it all out there. If something happens and I don't come back, at least I'm not the only one who knows the truth. I started working on cruise ships a few years ago. It's definitely a strange job. You're cooped up with your coworkers 24/7 for weeks on end. People hook up, people fight, and it isn't for everyone. Sometimes people get off at a port and never come back. What I'm saying is that I am used to the usual cruise ship weirdness, but this was different. I've been an AV techie for a few different ships in the Caribbean when a friend of mine suggested I check out Velorum. Their ships were really fancy, which means better equipment and better pay. So I applied, and even though I was less experienced than they were looking for, I got the gig. It started off pretty normal, just another job on the high seas. It was definitely stricter than other ships I'd been on, like crew wasn't allowed on the promenade unless they were working and were not meant to be above deck at all during our off hours. It didn't really affect me because I worked with the theater team and had access to pretty much everywhere. But you've got to understand, weeks at sea and not being allowed topside is pretty intense for some people. So at first, I took everything in stride. But looking back, I should have noticed something was off from the start. From day one, there was a vibe on the ship, like everyone was keeping secrets. Certain crew members were always whispering and shoot each other these looks, like they were afraid of something. At first, I thought it was just because everything was so strict, just people trying to keep their jobs, but they seemed genuinely scared of something. Usually, these ships are like a total party for crew, but this one was just the opposite. Everyone really kept to themselves. To be honest, I thought I might just quit. It really didn't seem like the place for me, but then I met Chloe. She was a new member of the theater team, so we got to know each other a bit during the show. I was putting her mic on and told some stupid joke about hearing her heartbeat faster but then she laughed. Pretty soon we were spending all of our free time together. Man, she was something else. Funny, smart, and super cute. I'd had a policy not to date anyone on the ships before, but she really was different. There isn't a lot of privacy on these cruises, but we found places we could be alone. Just because we weren't allowed topside, that didn't stop us from exploring every nook and cranny on that ship. I'd I'd sort of forgotten about the weirdness at this point. The vibe was definitely still off, but with Chloe around, I didn't really care. I didn't notice when people started disappearing. People do have a tendency to jump ship from these jobs, but this was like, poof, gone without a trace. All their stuff still in the cabins, passports, everything. Looking back now, it's so obvious that something was up. I wish I had noticed it sooner. Maybe I could have done something to protect Chloe. So, one of the people to go missing was Chloe's friend Pippa. I didn't really get to know her, but most of the actors hung around together, and Chloe really liked her. The fact that she just vanished was a bit strange, but like I say, people come and go from these ships all the time, so I didn't think too much about it. But Chloe was upset, so I agreed to help her look into it. The really weird part was that when we asked around, no one seemed to want to talk about it. Like, fine, people leave, but why the secrecy? I began to get the feeling that something was seriously messed up on that ship. Chloe and I made a plan that we'd hide some microphones in the officers' mess hall and see if we could find anything out. Looking back now, I wish we would just have left it alone. I set Chloe up with a few lav mics. They're small, but they get good range. She was supposed to plant them in the mess, and then we were going to meet in one of our secret hiding spots to see what we could hear. It was all going well at first. The officers all lust after the cast, so Chloe found it really easy to talk her way in. But then things took a turn. I think one of the officers must have noticed what Chloe was doing. They all stopped talking all of a sudden, even Chloe. 2 of the mics went dead immediately, but the 3rd one was still on. I heard someone say something I couldn't quite make out. I think Chloe must have had the mic hidden on her somewhere, but I swear it sounded like they said, "Throw her over." I ran to the officer's mess, but I was too late. They were gone. I tried to follow the sounds on the mic to find her. I could hear the wind, so I knew they were on deck somewhere. I must have ran all over the ship. Then suddenly the signal went static and disappeared. Look, I've been a sound engineer on a ship for a while. I know what it sounds like when a microphone gets wet. I think they threw Chloe overboard. Whatever happened, she was gone. I searched the ship from top to bottom, but there was no sign of her anywhere. I reported it to my duty officer, but he totally dismissed it, said that I couldn't accept being dumped. But I knew it was something else. I knew what I'd heard. A few days later, I got a text message from Chloe's phone. It said that she was sorry she'd left without saying anything, but that she thought it was easier than going through a breakup on a ship. I couldn't believe it. It really seemed like someone was covering it up now. I was devastated. I'd only known Chloe a short time, but she was everything to me, and now she was gone, and I felt responsible. I didn't stay on the ship long after that. I knew I had to do something. I owed Chloe that much. So I went on a mission, diving headfirst into the dark corners of the internet, looking for anything to help me uncover the truth behind these disappearances. I'd heard about something happening on another Velorum cruise ship, about the staff rebelling. That's when I found Lauren. Together, we've been piecing everything together, and I think it's bigger than we could have imagined. It looks like the same people who own the cruise line have started this wellness retreat in Slovenia. I heard about it in one of the forums, and I've managed to get myself hired as their sound engineer. Like I said, I don't know what I'm going to find when I get off there. But I know it's not good. Hopefully Lauren and her friends can help me bring the truth to light. I've got a friend running this account while I'm away. Thanks, Steve, but hopefully I'll be able to give you guys a proper update when I'm home. I don't know what we're going to find at this festival, but I hope we get some answers. For Chloe, if nothing else, wish me luck. I think I'll need it. That is the end of that story. This was created 8 days ago. I'm do some digging. One moment. So when I look up Valorum cruise ship careers, what I get is Carnival Cruise Line. I don't think I can find Valorum anywhere, so I'm not sure if that's even a legit company, but very interesting story. It is believable because I do know that there are cases where sex trafficking has been reported from cruise lines. And also, it is very accurate about what it's like working on a cruise ship. I actually was offered a position on a cruise ship back in 2017, and it is very brutal. There are no days off, so you are working 7 days a week. You are making less than minimum wage. Apparently, if you work on the sea, you don't have to follow the guidelines of minimum wage that they have on land. It's different. So I believe the pay at that time was like $8 an hour or something insanely low. No days off, and you're going to be working for at least 6 months straight, I believe it was. Basically like slave labor. Obviously, I turned it down. I said, fuck that shit. But yeah, I can imagine the turnover rate is really high on cruise ships. I'm not really sure why they underpay their staff like that. It's pretty unjust in my opinion. Anyway, this story, believable. I don't necessarily believe it, but very well written, and I do believe it could happen. So this story is called I'm a Believer, My Ghost Story. Growing up in the 1970s, my parents hired a maid. This was a common thing. Black women took the bus to the suburbs. They donned white maid uniforms and worked for upper middle class white families. Becky had been with the family since the early 1960s. She worked for my grandparents as well. I'd often see my grandfather waiting for Becky at the corner bus stop when I was riding to school in the morning. Becky was truly a part of our family. She worked for my grandparents 2 days a week, and for us 2 days a week. I was always a little jealous of her third family, where she worked that other day. I didn't know them, but felt like Becky belonged to me. My name is Rebecca. I was supposed to be called Becky, but when our Becky came to work for us, it would have been too confusing, so I was always Rebecca. Becky was a kind and gentle soul. She always put candy under our pillows. She cleaned our rooms, and if she found coins or money in our clothes, she ironed the bills and stacked the coins in a neat pile on our dresser. At Christmas time, she gave me and my sister gifts. She was so sweet and thoughtful. She loved us. Becky and her adult nieces Linda and Sylvia babysat us when my parents were on vacation. I was interested to see where Becky lived, and one day my mother took us downtown to her apartment. It was nice, a place where elderly people lived, a safe building. She lived up high, maybe on the 10th floor. What struck me was she had every single school photo of me and my two sisters framed and hanging on the wall. Like 20 or so school pictures of these white kids from the suburbs. We really were her family. My parents separated when I was 14, almost 15. My mother was absolutely despondent. She cried all the time. Becky, obviously concerned for me and my sisters, confided to us that her husband had left her many years prior. She identified with my mother. Becky took care of my mother, comforting her. It must have been hard for Becky to see her family dissolve this way. My grandfather, the one at the bus stop, had died the previous fall, and we were still mourning over that. My mom's mom had died the previous August, so my mother was really in a bad state of mind. Becky was our rock, someone who arrived twice a week to keep our home running. Then the unthinkable happened. In the summer of 1980, we returned home from summer camp. each other a knowing look. Mom ran downstairs to Becky while I dialed 0. There was no 911 at the time. The paramedics took her to a hospital. She died later that day from a stroke. We weren't allowed to see her in the hospital. We followed the ambulance because we weren't family. But yes, we were. Becky spent more time with us than her real family. I saw her daughter and a few other family members behind the glass. That was as close as we were allowed to her room. She was really brain dead by the time she went to the hospital. I saw the paramedics try to revive her in our family room. She basically died in our home. Why this long story, you ask? I want you to have some background. Mom finally started going out, trying to meet men. One night out of every weekend, I had to babysit my little sister. My older sister moved out at 18. I wasn't happy about this because I was in high school and wanted to be with my friends. While I was babysitting, I'd hear noises upstairs. I'd run upstairs. Our dog would be asleep on the sofa, and my little sister was fast asleep in her bed, but I swore I would hear footsteps. This kept happening, and I'd tell my mother, but she didn't believe me. My mother and father reconciled briefly. He moved back in. I was happy about it. He had hurt my mother by cheating on her. One night, while Dad was there, I heard this weird wailing. I thought it was the neighborhood fox, who routinely wailed at the moon. But this sound was closer. I thought maybe the fox was on the side of the house by the woods. As I tried to lift up my roller blind, I could hear this wailing. It was coming from above my head, the attic. I got in bed, too afraid to tell my skeptical mother. I knew she wouldn't believe me. At breakfast, Dad said, "Did anyone hear that weird noise last night?" I said yes. I wasn't crazy. There was a weird noise. Dad said it was coming from the attic. He set animal traps up there, but there weren't any animals in the attic. Then Dad and Mom split up for good. I'd still hear the footsteps when I was alone in the house. Years went by. I moved out and got married. In 1992, I separated from my husband and moved in with my mother. My mother went to Florida for the winter, and I was alone in the house. I started dating. One day, in the family room downstairs, my boyfriend said, "What the hell is that?" He heard footsteps. I was immune to them at this point. I said, "I think it's Becky. She died in this house. She loved us. If it is her, she's here to watch over us." A couple weeks went by. My boyfriend and I were in the living room having a romantic date by the fire. The lights were off. There was just the light of the fire. He went upstairs to use the bathroom. He came out of the bathroom and looked up the stairs. He just stood there frozen with his eyes bugging out. I thought he was drunk. I said, "What's the matter?" He said, "Didn't you see that?" I didn't see anything, but I knew it was Becky. I had never told my boyfriend that Becky wore a white maid's uniform and a pink cardigan. She wore that pink cardigan all the time. I called my mother and she finally believed me. I forgot to mention, my father, grandmother, and sisters went to Becky's funeral. My mother didn't go. She was angry with my father at the time, I guess. Everyone there was under the impression that I was named for Becky. In truth, my mother told me she named me after Becky Thatcher from Tom Sawyer, but I let Becky's family believe that I was named after her. It made them happy. They told me how much Becky loved us. I knew that already, but it was so nice to hear. That's the end of that story. That's pretty cool. That was a cool story. It would have been really cool if they were able to snap a photo or a video of Becky up the stairs or something, but it's a really cool story. May Becky rest in peace. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and read one more story. Let's sex trafficking. This was 2014. I was 17 at the time, and I would have to take the bus to and from school. The bus stop was on the main road, so I would have to walk a few blocks to get to the apartment complex. This is important for later. I was walking home from school one day, and this Honda van pulls over. A girl comes out. She introduces herself and tells me she's new to the area and wants to make new friends. I gave her my number, and quickly we made plans to have dinner. Maybe a day or two later, she picks me up in the same van, but this time with a man who was driving and also another young female. She did not mention these other two people, but I didn't think much of it. It was a lot of red flags I ignored. I was young and naive. The man was doing all the talking during our dinner, and the other two girls were quiet. Another red flag. He put on this fake nice tone in his voice the whole time, asking me questions. Then he started getting weird, like saying how he can read minds, and started telling me all this information he knew about me. I had no idea how he knew all of that, so I believed him. After dinner, we stopped by their house, which was in a whole other city than where my apartment is. Remember how the girl told me that she stayed by me? Another red flag. It was a really nice house though, and he had a Mercedes in the driveway. My young mind was intrigued. He told me how they're all roommates and hustle together. He took me back home that night, though, by himself, and was trying to convince me to be a part of their lifestyle. A couple days after this point, I'm only texting the man. The girl barely held any conversation with me, but he tricked me into thinking he was this super nice person. He asked me to pack some clothes and to stay with them. I texted my mom that I was moving out, and as I was already almost 18, she was okay with it for some reason. This is when shit hit the fan. He was not the nice, charming person that I had met. Only after I moved in did he tell me that those girls were sex workers and that I would become one too when I turned 18. He started telling me how to do my hair or how to dress. He gave me a whole new phone and a number with a tracking app on it. I wasn't allowed to contact my mother or any of my family or friends. He would keep insisting he could read my mind and hear my thoughts, even the smallest mistakes. I thought he would punish me for it. He duct taped my hands and feet. I'm shocked right now by this sentence. This is actually really, really brutal. I'm going to warn you right now. This is a lot more brutal than I was expecting, though I don't know why, judging by the title. Okay, just be aware there's torture coming. He duct taped my hands and feet. He tased my V. He stabbed me with screwdrivers. He threw me from the second floor by one leg. He punched me until I passed out. All of this with a grin on his face. He enjoyed hurting me. My God. I will never forget the look on his face. I can't explain it. It's like his eyes literally turned black. This was real. I thought only people were like this in the movies. People are really out there torturing other people. He also made me watch these gory videos of people getting decapitated, and the most disgusting videos of people getting tortured that I'd ever seen, all while holding a knife to my neck. Damn. I need a drink. Oh my God. He would also have sex with me every day when the girls went to work at the hotels. He would lie and say I was the only one he was intimate with and that I was special. He told me if I ever tried to leave or if I ever told anyone where I was, he would kill me. and he would kill them too. He would go into detail about exactly how he wanted to kill me and where he would put my body. One day, he had me lay down and beat me so bad in my stomach while his leg was choking over my neck. I blacked out and I woke up so confused. My vision was tunneled. I had a huge knot in the back of my head. I couldn't even stand up straight. I had no idea what else he did to me while I was passed out. But at that point, I told myself this man was going to kill me. I'd rather risk him killing me if I get caught trying to leave than spending any more time with this monster. I didn't care about the threats anymore. I wanted to be gone. I didn't sleep that night. I waited until I heard him snoring really loud, and I made a run for it. I took nothing, not even the phone, because it had a tracker on it. And god damn it, I made it. By the grace of God. I still didn't speak to my mother for about 3 months out of fear. I was right, because he went looking for me at her apartment. I don't even know how he knew where she lived. Eventually, I reached out to her, and she had filed a missing persons report. She was crying because she thought I was murdered. I went on with my life. I did end up stripping. I still do sometimes. Fast forward to 2017. One of the girls was smart because somehow she set him up. Son of a bitch is rotting in prison now. I found out because the detectives were looking for me. There's articles about him and all. I'm still cool with the girls. I know it wasn't their fault, and we still talk. So, dipshit, we will never meet again because you're going to hell. I just got a text. If you want the article, just send me a message. I'm getting way too many comments. A lot of y'all have been telling me to consider therapy. I got on antidepressants, and they've honestly changed my life for the better. So thank you, everyone. If it wasn't for y'all, I would have never considered it. Holy shit. I have to put a disclaimer on this video. I can't believe she went through that. This is a story that I kind of believe. I'm gonna go ahead and try and find the article. One moment. Where did she say she was? Okay, I can't find the article. And I don't really want to message the writer for it, so I'll leave the link down below to the story if you want to message this writer about the article. But holy shit, that was a really intense story. And I believe it. Alright guys, sorry to end on such a dark note. I do take a risk because I only briefly skim these stories and then I read them fully on these videos. So even I don't really know what I'm about to read fully. But I will say every single one of these stories was well written. Very dark, very dark. Alright guys, I will leave you at that. I hope that you enjoyed these whispers, and I hope that you have a wonderful day, a wonderful week, a wonderful year. But I'll probably see you again soon. Please leave a like, please subscribe, please leave a